So let's get into our hand positioning now, okay? So our hand position is going to be more or less our second line of defense, okay? Our first line of defense is space. If you're standing 10 feet away from me and you don't have a gun or like something that you could like throw at me really hard, you're not dangerous to me yet, okay? If you get close to me, then you become dangerous. Our stance, which we just talked about, is more about our balance, us being grounded to the floor, being able to bounce around, understanding agility and how movement can work, what type of attacks are smart in different types of stances and all of that. Our hand position is a little bit independent of that, okay? There's still like things that are incorporated, of course, like we'll talk in a second about which kind of guard pairs best with either a bladed stance or a squared stance. But our hand position is protecting our targets, where our stance is a little bit more inside of us. Like I said, it deals more with movement and all of that. The two types of hand positioning that we're going to talk about is more of a closed guard, which is just having our hands, both of our hands equally as close to our face, and then a longer guard where we usually have one arm out like this. You see this in like Thai boxing. You see this in normal boxing. In more of like a Dutch kickboxing style, you'll see people stand with a lot more of like a closed guard like this. They don't really mess around with having one of their arms out like that. We'll talk about the pros and the cons of that in a minute. So typically what you're going to see and what you have seen in the past is with a squared stance, you're typically going to want to go with more of a square or a closed guard, okay? This looks a little bit weird to me. It also feels weird in my body. Like a lot of the ability or one of the big pros to being able to use a long guard is that like you can use your lead hand pretty dynamically and pretty quickly, which you're kind of taking away the ability when you're not in a bladed stance. Right now I'm in more of a bladed stance to use this if I'm more in a squared stance because I'm like taking a few inches off of my range, which is a really important thing. A longer guard is typically paired with a bladed stance because you can be a lot longer. You can address the straight things a lot more like we kind of talked about, you know, not too long ago, depending on when it is that you watch this video. A squared stance or a closed guard also feels really weird in a bladed stance. When I'm like this, like, it just feels really awkward. Like intuitively, it feels really awkward. I also don't feel like I see a lot of this. I think a big deal of that is this lead hand. If I have like a inch or 2 inches, if I'm in a boxing or a kickboxing fight, and I'm standing like this, like I'm no longer able to see with this hand like this. I have to bring this hand down, and if it's going to be here, I might as well sometimes maybe just have it be a little bit longer. So that's kind of a big deal when you are in a bladed stance. Obviously, you need to be able to see. A lot of kickboxing is really done with our eyes. It's like we're playing a video game almost, where I'm like trying to react to all of the targets that are going on. I'm trying to evade from the things that are flying at me. Whereas like in some of the other combat sports like wrestling or jiu-jitsu or something, we can feel each other, we could press against each other. I can manipulate and get you to move in ways just by pressing or literally like pulling you into spots, pushing you into spots. In kickboxing, that really isn't a thing outside of the clinch, which is not what we're doing right now. A lot of it is done with our eyes, so they're probably the most important thing in kickboxing, which is really important. Um, so understanding that. So we're going to talk about a closed guard, and then we're going to talk about our long guard. Before we get into that, though, I want to give you guys what I call is my field goal spiel, where, Elias, can I use you again? Our field goal, or our face is more or less like the entering of a field goal, okay? So obviously people aim here on the face. They aim in like different spots depending on like, you know, where my guard is. If my hands are a little bit more in front, makes more sense for you to punch at my ear. If my hands are a little bit more out here, which for me I can't because these freaking guns are so big, but that's all the laugh you're gonna give me, dude? It's an empty gym, so when you make a bad, it's when you make a bad joke, it feels like a really bad joke. If my hands are more here like this, the straight shots are gonna be a lot more available. Okay, right? Obviously, depending on like the mechanics of how I'm built, like I don't have like the longest arms in the world, not like Monkey Boy over here. I have a little bit more shorter arms, and my torso is really long. You're kind of the opposite. You have like a shorter torso and longer arms, so he can like cover more things. If you're built like me, you need to be a lot more dynamic, like with all of this stuff. So we'll get into the more technical side of that, but I do want you to understand that your guard isn't just a safe haven, especially if you're fighting without gloves or even like an MMA glove, which is only like a centimeter or two big. It needs to be a dynamic thing because you're not going to be able to cover everything unless you're built really weird, which is probably not the case for, 99% of you guys on the other end of that screen. So this needs to be dynamic. I need to be able to move this and cover this depending on where people are hitting me. A lot of the time that I've gotten hurt in fights or in sparring or whatever, and I know this because I tape almost all of my rounds, is I'm getting hit like in this spot. I'm getting hit like as I'm rotated and like a hook will hit me here, or like I'll be here where my hand will be up, but this will sneak in. These are field goals, okay? And the person that's fighting you is going to try to be hitting you in spots that your arms aren't, obviously, okay? Well, actually, maybe not that obviously, because there's a lot of idiots out there that would just punch at nothing. But if you come against someone that actually knows what they're doing, they're going to try to aim for the targets that your hands and that your elbows can't be covering. So what I mean by this is if Elias is standing here and my guard is like this, he has really a lot of availability for the straight shots, okay? Keep going. If I rotate, these straight shots are no longer available to him, okay? If he's throwing hooks, my guard is covering those things. If I rotate like this, the hooks go on the inside. And this is really, really important because I feel like a lot of people try to learn striking from other sports like Muay Thai or boxing or Muay Thai or boxing, I guess, or K1 or some type of glory kickboxing. But they're using giant gloves, and when you're using giant gloves, you don't have to be nearly as dynamic as when you're in like really tiny gloves or just in your fists, because you just cannot cover just as much on your face or on these targets or anything just with this amount of covering, whether it be your fists or whether it be like a centimeter or two on an MMA glove. That's really, really an important point, and we're going to get into the dynamics of how to cover from all of those things here in a minute, but I want you guys to write that down, note that, and make it so that you're not thinking that you're safe just by doing this. That is not the case. People are going to eat you up if you think that that's the case. So the first type of hand position that we're obviously going to go over, or maybe not obviously, is our closed one, okay? This is the most important one because even if you do decide to use a longer guard, eventually you will get to a place where the guy is going to be close enough to where this isn't going to be, as efficient as just covering everything and making sure that everything is safe. One of the giant pros of using a closed guard is that it's simple, and simple is like almost always better when you're in a really intense fight or you're in like the heat of a battle. You want things to be really simple, and you want to be able to fall back on things that you know that are going to work. Your closed guard is one of those things. One of the kind of cons to this thing is that us as humans, we're not made to move around with our hands glued to our face. A lot of the things that we do in our movements and us like catching balance and when we're running or anything that requires some type of athletic movement, usually we have to do something with our arms. So this can sometimes feel like that you're throwing a wrench inside of that movement, because moving really dynamically with your hands by your face can get like, a little bit tricky sometimes. Not saying that you can't do it. There are a lot of really good fighters that do it, but I will say that that's one caveat to that, is that I can move way more free if my hands can kind of move with me in more of a longer guard versus if I'm in a closed guard. The three defensive technical things that I want us going over are super simple, but again, if you don't understand them, they can be really challenging to target and figure out why you're getting hit. And also it can just get really frustrating because if you don't fully understand how to make your guard, especially the closed guard, really dynamic, you could get knocked out by doing all of the quote-unquote right things. So what I mean is, and I know I just talked about this, but if me and Elias are fighting each other and my hands are here, I'm pretty safe from all of the hooks, okay? If I start to rotate, keep going. If I start to rotate and open up this way, I'm going to get hit in between this field goal, okay? Like that's how Gaethje knocked out Barboza, is Gaethje threw, or I don't even know if he threw a right hand, but he made Barboza circle this way, and when he did, he bombed this on him. And I think Barboza's hands were pretty tight to his face, but it didn't matter because the angle that the hook comes at is very different if Elias is standing in front of me versus if he's standing this way, okay? I hope that that makes sense. Does that make sense to you? Okay, of course it makes sense to him. I teach him everything that I know. But I hope that that makes sense. So why this becomes important is because if you want to stay in a closed guard, you can't just stand there, okay? Elias can throw punches at me. Go ahead. Yeah, if they're straights, ideally you address the straights by parries and pulls and slips like we already talked about in the stance video, okay? There are going to be occasions where the guy is teeing off, and because punches can come at like so many crazy angles, like no one really punches straight down, like that would be kind of the weirdest angle of a punch. But for the most part, if you cover, I can throw a punch at almost any angle on Elias. Like I could throw them straight up, I could throw them at like kind of whatever degrees this is, 45, like a 90, and then whatever 90 plus 45 is, 135. But point being, I can throw these at really dynamic angles. So Elias needs to be able to address that. Not only in the angles, but I could throw them really straight. Okay? So one of the techniques that we're going to do is I'm going to stand here with my guard up, and when I circle, I keep my forehead pointed at Elias. This is just going to cover how to like get out of some heat when someone's throwing some really good hooks on you. We'll talk about the straights in a minute, but this is going to get you out of some trouble with just the hooks. So Elias is throwing hooks. If I move, keep going, this direction without keeping my forehead pointed at Elias, I'm going to get hit. Okay, I've seen this happen. It's happened in fights. People get knocked out. They're like, my hands were up, and I was like, yeah, they were up, but your forehead wasn't pointing at your opponent, which keeps you safe from hooks and most round things. So one person's throwing punches, okay? And as you circle, I keep my forehead pointed at Elias, okay? If ever for an instant I go like this and open up, that's when round things start to hit you. So one little quick drill that you guys can do is I can protect myself, but anytime I'm circling, especially if my back is on the cage, I always keep my forehead pointed at my opponent, okay? Only when they're throwing hooks. If they start to throw straights and I keep my forehead pointed at my opponent, those are going to go right through the middle, just like the field goal that we were talking about. So in order to address straight shots, like I said, most of the time we want to parry, we want to move our head, we want to pull, sometimes we want to go under them. Those are the ideal situations, but fighting isn't always in ideal situations. If I'm in a bind and I need to get out of the way of a straight shot, throw like a left hook, right straight. I block, but this one's coming straight. Instead of, if I don't know the difference, because moving your head can also get you in some trouble if you don't do it with your forehead pointed. Like if Elias throws like a hook and I think it's a jab and I slip like this, that's also how people get knocked out too. But if Elias throws a straight and I'm in a bind, I can always rotate with this punch. The big downside of that is I can't see Elias, okay? Which is a really big deal. But it's better than getting knocked the hell out, okay? So left hook, right straight. I can keep everything here when I'm in a bind and I know that that one's coming straight because usually you can tell, and a piece of that is like experience and skill level and how long you've been doing this. But you know that this looks different than this, and those are like very micro movements, but eventually you will get really good at doing that. But if I see that this one's going to be a straight and I don't want to move my head because I'm a little bit sketched out about Elias maybe turning it into a hook or whatever, if this is the case, I can just rotate with this. Like you see this in boxing a lot because boxers don't only aim for the front of people's heads, they aim for like the back of the ears, the temples, like they aim for all kinds of different spots because really all that they have to hit is this head and then like their body, which they pull their shorts up so high. Does anyone know why they do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's because they want to make it easier, honestly. Like they pull their shorts up really high and then say that you can't hit them there when like a lot of that is like clean stuff and not your nuts. So that's like really weird to me. But anyways, Boxers, that's like one thing that they figured out really good, is when someone's teeing off on you, like this type of like having like a dynamic guard here gets you out of a lot of stuff. Like that got me out of the right hand just because I rotated a little bit like this. So a drill that you guys can do to have that be a little bit easier for you guys to follow is just have your partner throw hooks, and then when they're ready, go ahead, throw straight, whatever, boom. I just rotate with this. But I make it so that I can keep an eye on Elias's punches, and I don't have to bring my hands off of my face to parry, or I don't have to move my head a ton, because like I said, if it is a hook, boom, it's going to hit me like this. So it can just get uncomfortable in those types of situations. So just get real comfortable staying here. Elias throws straights. I'm rotating. I can pull sometimes, parry sometimes. If I know it's a straight, which I didn't right there, but if I know it's a straight, I can slip. But this space is super critical to be like really tight in your hands, and it can get really sketchy if you want to parry, if you want to move your head, if someone's like really teeing off on you. So that's really important. The other defensive technique that we'll talk about with the closed guard is how to catch a kick, okay? So there's a couple different ways to try to catch a kick. One is the traditional way, Elias throws a round kick. I just catch like this with the same side, okay? A lot of the time, if someone's in a closed guard, and I know that I've done this because when I fought John Lineker, the only way that I was able to like keep that little Tasmanian devil off of me was by drilling kicks into his arm. So people, if they're good and you have a closed guard, are going to do their best to keep these hands on you because this isn't like a dynamic guard. So when Elias goes to kick me, boom, this can get just like super frustrating, especially if Elias is longer or he kicks me so hard that I'm knocking myself off balance. So in order to catch the kick, can you go on the left side? We're going to shelf it, okay? So instead of blocking with two hands like this, and instead of, go ahead, catching like this, we're going to shelf this kick by just catching it underneath. Is that okay on your foot? Elias has a hurt foot. But we're here like this because he's a little bitch. But if we're here like this, we shelf this, we can clear this, and then we can start to attack afterwards. But pretty much what being able to shelf kicks does is it makes it so that you can address those kicks without always feeling like you're getting knocked off balance or feeling like you have to really sit down on a block, ground yourself to the feet, and then try to attack afterwards, which is like sometimes an okay answer, but against everyone, it's not going to get you the result that you want. So when Elias kicks, I shelf. It's exactly almost the same as a block here. You just shelf this. You pin it to your body, okay? So I'm not just making a shelf, but I'm pinning this leg to my body. Boom. After here, you can do a number of things. Sometimes you have to take a little step back to clear the leg. You can sweep. You can control here. You can shoot a shot. Really, that is all up to you. The important piece, though, is that I'm doing this safe. If Elias goes to my head, not a big deal. Boom. I'm still really protected. I can still shelf it even if he kicks to my head. But he kicks. Boom. I clear this. I can counter with whatever I want. If he kicks on the other side, it's the same thing. I shelf this. I clear this. I can sweep. I can elbow. You can get as creative as you want with all of those counters, but that's really important. So adding these two things together is going to be very critical, okay? A drill that you guys can do is the same one that we just talked about, but now we're going to add in shelving kicks, okay? Pretty much good drills are just taking the lot of striking, saying that you can only do like one or two things, and then once you got those one or two things down, you add another one or two things, and then you add another one or two things. And that's like really how drills get built. But I would really highly suggest that whether it be in what I'm teaching you or whether it be in some other type of skill that you're trying to learn, doing a drill with like one or two things in mind, getting that completely down, adding another couple things is going to be like mega important. Whether, like I said, it's the things that I'm teaching you or whether it's whatever the hell you want to learn on your own. Drilling like that is a very important thing, and you can kind of make it your own, which is really important because I don't want people to be able to just focus on, you know, whatever they're being taught. I want them to be able to make art for themselves, and a lot of that is getting a good drilling partner and then just like drilling over and over again something, adding on to it. I said that 3 times. I don't need to say it again. But Elias is throwing punches at me. Boom. I'm rotating here. I'm making sure that when I need to, if I want to get more dynamic, I can. Boom. When he goes to kick, I'm shelving this, adding whatever counter I want afterwards, and then going back to blocking. Boom. That was a normal block. That's okay. He goes again. I shelf. I add my counter. He goes back to punching. Okay? Obviously, you guys don't have to just do these rotations here like this. You guys can use your parries. You can move your head movement. You can use these angles. You can use pulls. Make it as dynamic as you want. But the idea that you're protecting the field goal is a really, really important one. And then for some of you MMA guys, having a closed guard is going to be, you're going to defend the shot a lot different depending on if you're here or if you're here. If me and Elias are fighting and I'm in a long guard, he pretty much has a straight shot to my hips here as long as he gets underneath, yes, as long as he gets underneath this arm, which is kind of a big deal. When I'm in a squared stance, that's not as easily available, okay? Whereas if he's in a long stance, go ahead and he fits in, he gets in, boom. Like me catching an underhook, at least with this hand, maybe with this hand, but with this hand is not going to really happen, okay? If I'm in a closed stance or a closed guard though, and Elias takes a shot, boom, I can really match his level here, but I can also catch an underhook. And the best way, maybe not the best way, but a really good way to defend a shot is by just simply catching an underhook and then defending from there, because it's a lot easier to deal with an underhook than it is your own whizzer, or at least in my experience. So another thing that you guys can add on top of that drill to make it a lot more dynamic is Elias can throw whatever punches he wants, but then when he goes to shoot, I'm ready here to catch my underhook, have him high, we break, and I've just defended the shot. He's punching, whatever, boom, boom. He shoots, I catch this underhook because it's really easy. I build him back up, I'm here, and then we break. I won't get into like too much of the specifics of an underhook. If you are doing MMA, you probably realize what the difference of a whizzer and an underhook is. That was just a little bit of bonus material for you guys, for the MMA guys. Let's talk about our long guard now, okay? So this one's a little bit more dynamic, okay? And I definitely, no matter what the situation is, I would not suggest having a long guard in a really close, dangerous space. What I define as a close, dangerous space is one that's like here, okay? When I'm here, like more or less, Elias can't really throw a hook and land this on me. Oh, maybe he can, okay? Here, definitely not. I could be a little bit longer, and he's not going to be able to hit me with really any punch that he wants. He could definitely probably still jab me or cross me, yeah, but he can't really hit me with a hook. So when I'm in a more of a distance, I really only have to worry about certain things. Like obviously from here, I don't need to worry about him throwing an uppercut. I need to worry about straight punches. I need to worry about almost all round kicks, but I don't need to worry about everything. So it can be a little bit more where I'm using my long guard here because not everything really needs to be covered, because I have a pretty decent predictor of what he's able to throw. Okay, if you don't know what those things are, it's pretty simple. Hit me with a hook, can't. Hit me with an uppercut, can't. Hit me with a jab, can. Okay, so that's kind of how you start to figure out your range and all of that stuff. But when we do get closer, this I consider a range where I don't care how good you are at having a long guard, you're stupid if you do it from this range, okay? If Elias is here, or at least like continue to use it, like you can use it maybe for a second, try to jet yourself out or counter or something. But if you hang out in this range with a long guard, it's just a matter of time till you get smoked. So when you're closer, this is the type of guard that you want to use. When you're in more of a distance, you can use more of a long guard because, like I said, Elias doesn't get to throw anything from any angle and still be able to hit me. So one of the pros to being able to use our long guard is that I can be really long with it, of course, but I can be really dynamic in my movements too. Like I talked about before, it's really natural for us as people to move and have our arms do something, okay? So this can just feel a little bit better because I'm not really worried about keeping my hands mega tight to my face and being this type of fighter, which is one that you do have to know how to do because you do need to be able to address when things get sketchy in this type of space. But when I'm a little bit out of space, I want to be a little bit more movie, I can definitely use my long guard here, okay? Another time that, or another pro of the long guard is that I can be really dynamic with this left hand, okay? Or this lead hand, I should call it. If you're a righty, it's going to be your right hand. If you're, if you're lefty, it's going to be your right hand. If you're righty, it's going to be your left hand. But me throwing a punch from here to here, and me throwing a punch from here to here is a big difference, okay? Like I can really like use this almost like a spear or like a sword, where I'm just kind of using this just to target Elias with my lead hand. Like I did this a lot against Cheeto when I was fighting Cheeto. Like I'm just not even always trying to like hit the face. Sometimes I'm just trying to tie up his arms. I'm using this as kind of a space finder. But I can get really dynamic by adding this in. And like I talked about before, striking is done with your eyes. It's a video game. So if we're playing this video game and I'm constantly just throwing input at Elias, that can make the video game a lot harder once we start adding in like shots that are like meant to be there to hurt people, okay? One of the cons of using a longer guard is that unless like you really get it and you understand where your openings are, where you're not, or you know, like where your attacks are, if you don't understand the things that you're leaving open to get hit and have a way to address those things, then eventually you'll fight someone that will figure it out. So for example, like if you're fighting a Thai guy and they're using this type of long guard, I'm going to launch right uppercuts on this person all day, okay? It's just a good idea. You have to have an answer for this. Also, if you throw like a good overhand, you have to have an answer for this, which luckily I'll be giving to you. But the whole idea is that if you are going to use a long guard, you do have to have a lot of experience and practice. Don't like watch this video and in your next fight be like, I got it, I got the long guard. Go out and use your long guard and get overhand knocked out. Don't do that, okay? It takes a lot of experience and it takes a lot of time learning like where you're open, how to cover, and all of those things. But it does take a lot of practice because it is a little bit more dynamic. Lastly, with the long guard, it's always a good idea to pull when you're using a long guard. This is good for like staying in place. Of course, I can still like pull and get myself out and counter and all of that stuff. With my long guard, just because I am giving so much of my face on this side, I'm giving this angle for an uppercut because using my elbow to block that would be a little bit difficult. I'm giving this entire side of my body like ability for him to punch and kick and all of that. Because that is the case, pulling is almost always a good idea. So when I am using my long guard and Elias goes to punch me in any way that he wants, getting myself out of range is usually a good idea. It usually makes like the longer guard is maybe a little bit built for the longer guy. Like you do see longer guys in boxing fight like this, right? Like you don't see the tinier guys being like this against one of the longer guys, or I guess you do sometimes, but it's not mega typical. But being a little bit of a longer guy, you can use this to keep space. When he punches at you, sometimes the best answer is just to get your body out of the way. So that's like the last thing on the long guard before we get into our defensive techniques. So our defensive techniques, one of the most important things that we need to understand is that essentially what you're doing, and it's because it's kickboxing and not boxing, when I have this arm out, essentially what I'm doing is playing Philly shell game in boxing, okay? It's almost the exact same thing. The only thing is when I'm like this, if Elias decides to throw a kick on this side, I'm going to get smoked with it most often. If Elias decides to throw a kick on this side, I'm going to get smoked by that most often, okay? Having this out is really important in kickboxing. It's why this doesn't really work. Also, like I'm giving a lot of my leg too, but that's more of a stance issue, but it kind of gets paired with the Philly shell and gets kind of under that same umbrella. This I believe to not be good in kickboxing really, or MMA in general, just because like I said, you can get smoked on this side, and blocking a kick with one hand in like tiny gloves is really sketchy. Also, if Elias, like I said, wants to go over top here, boom, he can. So in order to fix that, I just stick my arm out, but I'm not out of the woods. I'm still understanding that I'm more or less still using a Philly shell. I'm just using this in a more dynamic way too. So when my long guard is out, if Elias does go to kick me on this side, I can bring my hand there. Here, it's not as much of an option, but the idea is almost the same. I'm in my long guard, Elias goes to kick me on this side that he thinks I'm only protected on one. It's a really quick bring over. Same thing if he kicks me on this side. I can bring my hands back to my face opposed to a Philly shell. Obviously, that's not happening. Okay, go ahead, kick. Another way that I can block these types of kicks that come on this side with my long guard is I just make myself long and I turn my shoulder. Okay, you're obviously giving up your leg. Okay, so if Elias does go to kick my leg, I'm in some trouble here. But if I know that this is going to be a high kick, I'm bladed, I'm in this stance, and Elias tries to kick me and I don't want to try to bring my hands back to my face, go ahead. This will keep you mostly safe, okay? Like this is really big in Taekwondo and karate. Like when they do go to block kicks, sometimes go ahead, head kick. They will just kind of lean, block like this. Like that's a totally okay thing to do. Actually, it almost makes me upset when I'm reflecting on it because when I did fight Cheeto, I did use this type of block, and the commentators, I won't even say which one, but the commentators were like, oh, now Cheeto's scoring his kick, and Corey's not being able to block with two hands. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't have to, dummy. You know, I didn't want to call you that, but dummy. So I don't want to have, that's like not a thing, okay? Elias can kick me as hard as he wants in the head. If I rotate like this, like you're kicking my lat, like that really doesn't hurt that bad. It hurts about just as much as getting kicked like anywhere else on your body, kind of, but it's not the biggest deal in the world is what I'm saying. So being able to use your long guard, what you're giving up is they think that they can kick you on this side that you're only protecting with one hand, but you have that answer. If he decides to kick me on this other side, I have this answer, or go ahead, I have this answer where I'm just turning, covering, I'm totally protected from the high kick. That's really an important note to note with that, okay? The other opening that I'm giving is I'm giving an overhand, right? So Elias can smoke me with that. I almost defend that the exact same way that I would defend anything like a high kick or anything that was coming at this type of angle that's going to try to hit me in my ear. Elias goes to throw his overhand. I do the exact same thing and it keeps me safe, okay? The downside is that I kind of have to like break my posture some. Like I have to commit to this, you know, which, back up for a sec. This is like not the most ideal attacking position. But even though I'm committing myself in like a postural way and like a positional way, it's still okay because I'm not getting hit by this overhand. Another thing that Elias is likely going to try to do is he'll try to uppercut me here, okay? Because that's like, if you watch like old school K1 tapes, this is how people used to try to beat the ties, is they used to try to get, can you do a long guard? They used to try to get really close, and the ties would stay like really shielded from these, but your head's either going to go, it's either going to be open here, or it's going to be open here. So for our answer for that, when Elias does go to uppercut, I just rotate with it, but instead of going here, I still do that same type of lean. If I can make him hit my elbow, I definitely will try to make him do that. But I'm more or less leaning. You just don't need to reach as much with that. But he goes to uppercut. I just lean myself out the way. Or I do what we were talking about where I'm changing this field goal post and making it so that there's something in the way of him hitting me. It seems like Kung Fu-like almost. Like Elias tries to hit me and I'm like, whoosh, try to hit me with some other shit. Whoosh, whoosh. It can turn into Kung Fu real quick, but Kung Fu can be legit. It just kind of got taken to the point where it's like a little bit nerdy now. Sorry if you do Kung Fu. But it's like not as realistic as it probably once was back in the day. But just to recap where the openings are and how to defend them. Elias kicks me on this side, I block. He goes to kick me on this side, I can still block. He goes to kick me again on this side. I block using that. If he goes to punch me with an overhand, it's the same thing. I protect myself. I stay closed off on this side so that nothing tricky can happen here. If he goes to uppercut me, I either change the field goal or I lean myself back. The other defensive technique that we'll talk about is I can use this, like I said, pretty dynamically. So one way that I'll use this pretty dynamically is just to be able to steer Elias, okay? It's not necessarily the most, it's not a punch attack, but you are gaining some type of ground and you are gaining like some type of advantage by making it so that I could take a little step this way and not have to worry about getting punched on this side. So I wouldn't even call it as much like a check hook or anything like that. I would just say that think about using this lead hand as a way to just tie up some of his arms. Like sometimes I'll punch over here, sometimes I'll punch here, but what I'm trying to do is just tie up his arms. Boom, and then steer him off to the side. So I'll use this lead hand. I'll make him have to be busy. If he does chuck at me, boom, with something, like you can make it real. I know my defensive positions and where I'm open. Boom, and I can use this to start to gain my angles and my advantages, which again we'll talk about in a different instructional, because we can really dive deep into what I'm calling advantages, but angles pretty much. But I can really use this lead hand to really get that stuff going. The last thing that we need to address is this body shot here, okay? So a lot of the time that's going to come with like a heavy kick. So if I'm in my long guard and Elias doesn't try to kick me in my body, go ahead, kick me in my body. That would be pretty silly of him because I'm giving him all of this. When I'm in a closed guard and he tries to kick my body, a lot of the time it looks like he's about to nail one of my elbows, which is not ideal for Elias. But when I'm in my long guard, Elias can almost freely kick me into my side, okay? The reason that the Thais catch kicks a lot is because Thais stand with their elbows way high. They almost want you to kick their body because they're really, really good at catching the kicks. That's an important thing to note. So don't watch Thai, it's kind of interesting because all of the martial arts seem to fit the really specific tools that they need in specific spots just naturally. So I've learned this by watching a lot of Thai guys, because I'm watching guys fight like this, and if you're kicking me in my body and I still want to fight like this, but I don't have the tool that stops that, then I'm not, I'm not doing good martial arts. I'm not doing well thought out martial arts. But the Thais have kind of already done it for us. So if you're leaving an arm out, they're going to try to attack that. When they do, you catch their kick, okay? So the way that I'm going to catch the kick so that it doesn't break my ribs or hurt me, when Elias kicks, I give him my loins, okay? I call these my loins, all right? All of the shit that hurts to get hit in is in front, with the exception of the kidneys, but it's not that bad getting hit here versus getting hit here or in the occasional kidney, okay? So when Elias goes to kick me, I turn my body in a way where he's hitting me on my back strap and not in my organs, which are in the front, okay? So I have this really long guard. Elias sees that opening. If he kicks me, boom, and I'm like, ah, shit, I got to start addressing that. He kicks me, super easy way to address it, okay? From here, you can either attack right away, you can go to sweep, you can go into your shot, you can clear this, whatever you want to do. There's other YouTube videos on all that stuff. I'm more interested in you guys actually learning different things. So when Elias kicks, boom, that's how I catch, okay? If he's mixing in a lot of high kicks and all of that stuff, Elias goes, I just mix this up a little bit, I just cover it, and I can still catch this. Okay, but the other side, because this is important. If Elias kicks me on the other side, I can just step and stay in my stance. I'm for the most part getting hit in my back strap or my side, not really my organs, but I don't like the feeling of it. It feels just like if one thing goes astray, I'm going to get hurt real bad to the body. So if Elias is kicking me on my rear side, I tend to try to switch my stance so that I have more of this back strap protecting me, instead of, like I said, him turning over a hard kick and this because people kick at different angles, and his knee grazing me and hitting me all hard in the ribs or in the liver. Why'd you just smile? You like doing that? Yeah. I can tell. I can tell you like kicking people without shin. It's fun kicking people without shin guards. But Elias kicks. I'll just drop step, switch my stance so that he's kicking me more in my back strap, which doesn't hurt that bad. And then same thing, I can clear, I can shoot my shot, I could kick him in the nards. No, not on you. He kicks, boom, I switch. Defensive drills are pretty straightforward, there's nothing mega complex or complicated or anything that I feel like you maybe wouldn't think of on the other side of the screen given enough time. But we're essentially going to do the same thing to drill all of these things. Again, we're just going to drill bit by bit by bit. So first thing that we're going to do, Elias is just going to throw punches on me, okay? And I can work all of the defenses that I have. I address straight things with my parries. I address the hooks with blocks. I address the straight things with slips, pulls, all of that. Just do it with a long guard now. So Elias is punching, boom. I cover instead of, go ahead over again. Instead of always having to feel like I have to do this, go ahead. I just turn my shoulder, hide this here. If he decides to go with an uppercut, I defend myself here, or uppercut again, please. Boom, I rotate and try to make him punch my elbow. Okay, but Elias is just going to throw shots really slow at me. I'm just defending myself with this long guard. Boom. Here, getting out of the way of those things. He throws an overhand, I protect. Once you start to feel really comfortable using your long guard, you can start to add in kicks to where Elias is going to start kicking. Go ahead again. Boom, and I can add in the catches. Usually they're going to try to target this side that's up. So I'm pretty much just defending myself using more of a long guard. Boom, 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 catching. He throws overhand or uppercut, it doesn't matter. It was almost the same. I just lean a little bit on there. Boom, he throws a left head kick. Boom, I can bring my hand over to block. So not a ton changes. Okay, once you add that, just for you MMA guys out there, because I am in a longer guard, when Elias goes, just shoot like a single. When he does go to shoot this, like catching an underhook from here is not ideal, okay? So when he shoots, you just have to be able to catch a really good whizzer. If he's in real deep, I'm going to have to whizzer him down. If he's not that much, I can just start to pull my leg out, fight his hands. But when you want to incorporate MMA into all of it, when I'm in my long guard, Elias takes a shot. Catching an underhook is going to be a little bit more difficult than if you were in a closed guard. But if he shoots, boom, I can always catch this whizzer, give him kind of like the blade of my body so that I can start defending this just like a typical single. So that's our hand positioning, okay? Either closed guard, long guard, they get paired with different styles of stances. Each one has their own openings. Each one is dynamic in its own right, but definitely things that you have to know how to do. That's our hand positioning subsect. Now we'll get into fighting open stance, where we can kind of get into the more what I consider to be fun things about fighting now that we have our stance down and we have our hand positioning down.